Hi, this is John Lovett at The Missing Reel. This month we're going to be talking about high concept and screenplay structure. We'll talk about story structure later, but this month we're going to concentrate strictly on the structure of a screenplay. Now there are 4 elements to high concept. Fascinating subject. The story arouses our interest just because of the subject. Great title. Tells the audience what the story is about. Snakes on a plane is a good example. Inciting action is the core of the problem of the story and easily expressed. The story explained in 1 to 2, no more than 3 sentences, preferably 1 or 2. And a unique hook reveals the uniqueness or special circumstances of your story. Now for some sample high concept storylines. The Earth is invaded and nearly destroyed by a super powerful alien force. A circus clown has a midlife crisis and decides to become a mailman. A 6-year-old American boy is separated from his parents and finds himself lost in post-war Japan. An autistic gardener is put out on the street when his boss dies, but manages to survive by making friends and impressing people with his wisdom. And a 20-year-old suicidal boy falls in love with an 80-year-old woman who loves life. So those are some of the examples of high concept. Now let's explore screenplay structure. A screenplay is structured both from a physical as well as story aspects. First, we will see about the physical structure of the screenplay and how it is organized into scenes. Then, we will talk about story structure. Finally, we will talk about how screenplay structure and story structure work hand in hand. So more about screenplay structure. For speculative screenplays, there is a limit of 120 pages. As each page of a screenplay is equivalent to 1 minute of screen time, that means a motion picture script is limited to an equivalent of 2 hours of screen time. As most motion pictures are usually marketed around 90 minutes, your script should be finished around 110 pages. And in that way, the producer and director have enough pages to edit. A screenplay is structured into scenes. The scenes are organized into acts, as scenes should be short. Each scene should not be more than 5 pages, and 3 to 5 pages being appropriate. In other words, you should have a slug line. And we'll talk more about slug lines, but a slug line, interior, exterior. Where is the scene located? And so that you can have a scene in a room with 2 people speaking, but you can move the interest, the camera, but our interest, you can move it from place to place within that scene by changing the slug line. And we'll talk about that. But therefore, each scene should last from 3 to 5 pages, or 3 to no more than 5 pages, or 5 minutes of screen time. Therefore, for a 120-page screenplay, based on 3 to 5 scenes, you should have between 24 and 40 scenes. Now, what does this ultimately mean to you as a writer? It means that you can control what you are writing to. Because if you can control what you're writing to, you don't have this immense screenplay to write. You have now taken the elephant and broken it down into bites that you can swallow. So, if you take a 120-page screenplay, break it down to 3 to 5 minute scenes, you'll have between 24 and 40 scenes, somewhere in there. Now that's doable. That's an elephant you can eat. Each screenplay is organized in 3 up to 8 acts. Now I say that because the UCLA Film School organizes things into a traditional 3-act structure. USC Film School organizes things into an 8-act structure. Whatever you want to do. 3 acts, 120 pages. You've got basically the first act, 30 pages. The second act is 60 pages, divided in half because you've got the midpoint. So the second act is 30 pages, midpoint 30 pages, and then the third act is 30 pages. But if you have an 8-act, then it's 15 pages per act. Within each act, the scenes can be organized into interconnected mega scenes. Now, a mega scene can be 15 to 30 pages. Each mega scene functions as a major story building device. And I'll explain. So, in your first act, because we're going to deal with the 3-act structure, the first act is 30 pages, or about 25% of the screenplay. It has the inciting action, which introduces the main characters and creates the world. And that occurs on about 10%. Page 12, page 15, whatever you want to use. So the numbers, again, up in the side, there, that's 6 to 10, 5 to 3. So you've got, if you have 5 scenes, if you have 5-page scenes, then you should have 6 scenes. If you're running 3 pages per scene, then you should have up to 10 scenes. But basically, you can break it down into 2 15-page mega scenes. So much so that you have mega scene 1, which develops to your turning point 1 or the inciting action. Call it what you want, but it's about halfway through your first act. And then you have a mega scene 2, which is the second half of that first act. And then you'll have a turning point 2, change of plans. And the opportunity, change of plans, all of those are taken from various sources. So don't try to relate it to any one single source. But your first act should consume about 30 pages or 25%. Now, some people are going to argue that, well, the first act should last as long as it lasts. And I want to assure you that, yes, if you're laying out, it's your screenplay, it's your thing. This is not a paradigm, but this is a suggestion that you can build your screenplay. So the next Act 2, again, as I said, it's Act 2 is approximately 60 pages, but you have 2 parts of that act. You have the Act 2A, if you will, which is 30 pages, again, 25%, but there's rising action in that. In other words, you're taking the story to the midpoint. So you have 2 15-page mega scenes, again, 6 to 10, 5 to 3-page scenes. Then you have Act 2B, which is all your complications, and it's going to draw you into the third act. 30 pages, 20%. 2 15-page mega scenes. Now, each of the mega scene serves as a point to build to. Now, you can build your second act, but your second act can be, if you've got a very short first act, your second act should be longer. In other words, you're going from 60 pages, maybe to 70 pages. But your second act has to include at least these two mega scenes of where you have complications, a midpoint, and higher stakes. And you've got to build into that story so that at the midpoint is your point of no return. The main character or characters, the main character has gone through a change of plans. Now there have been complications to his plans, his, her, it doesn't matter. But you get to the midpoint, which is a point of no return. You have higher stakes, and then you have the beginning of the third act. Right before the beginning of the third act, you have a major turning point, a major setback, or major turning point, or whatever you want to call it. But you've had a scene or scenes that our hero has had a major setback. Now, Act 3, again, is approximately 30 pages. However, unlike your first act and the first half of your second act and the back half of your second act, the third act can be 1 page or it can be 30 pages. It's how long you want it to be. But it's one large mega scene is what it is, unless you push it to the full extent of 30 pages. Then you're going to have 2 15-page mega scenes. But it is the resolution of the major setback. You have a final push to the resolution. Then you have the climax of the film. Now the film, like I said, films today are they run anywhere from 89 to about 94 minutes. So you're going to have at the 90% mark, you should have the climax, so that the last 10% of the film is a resolution and any kind of aftermath you want to have. Let's look at the classic film Casablanca. The climax of the film comes when Humphrey Bogart shoots the German colonel. The aftermath is he and the police captain are walking off into the rain saying, I think it's the beginning of a beautiful relationship. So that 1 page of dialogue becomes your aftermath. But the climax occurs about 3 to 5 minutes earlier. Now here's something that's very true. I want to tell you this. A structural approach to screenwriting requires patience and disciplines, but the rewards are great. This isn't something that you can look as a paradigm, to quote Sid Field. But if you follow a structural approach, at least in the beginnings as a screenwriter, you will be rewarded with your screenplays getting sold. As soon as you become a name and can do what you want, do what you want. But a structural approach will lead to success. Now, it will also require patience and discipline. So that's all for this month. Please comment and tell me what you think. Thanks very much. Bye. This is John at The Missing Reel. Here on YouTube, we would like you to subscribe, like, share, and comment. And don't forget to ring the bell. Thanks.